Dafka advanced.
Oh, Dafka. Okay.
And tomorrow night I have a parent-teacher conference for
Well, very nebuch. My condolences. All right, we are
Once report card time comes out, my time is gone.
okay. So anyway, so we are right now. It's okay because I slept through most of the class last night. So tonight I'm awake. And we're at 2 lines before the Mishnah, Tznin on Hacha, which is actually a new issue, going relating back to the Mishnah which we had learned to earlier yesterday. Down about 7. 2 lines below the 2 lines above the Mishnah. Tznin Hacha, we learned here Matlotinim b'chol Sanhedrin, that which should not learn all Masechta Sanhedrin, which is an interesting concept, which is like this. If you have 2 sets of witnesses, the Mishnah just talked about this, to a case like this, you have 2 sets of witnesses. One sees one claims to have seen the murder from window number 1, and the other claims to have seen the murder from window number 2. It turns out that one of them is Eidim Zomrim. The one who claimed to be from window number 2 was lying. They weren't actually there. They were in Timbuktu at the time, right? So the halacha is they're killed, right? Because they thought to put this guy to death. But on the other hand, the murderer is also killed because he still the testimony of the people who are window number 1, right? Which was never disproved. So it's a unique case because this is a case where the murderer is killed and the witnesses are killed. Because normally it's either the witnesses are killed or the murderer is killed, not both. Kasher Zoma. Exactly. That's what we're going to say here. Okay. So why not be such a big chiddush by you, but it was a big chiddush by the Gemara. Tzin hachamad lo tzinim b'chol sanhedrin. Hu v'hein ha'aragin. He, the murderer, and the group of witnesses are killed. Vashniya p'tur, and the second group is exempt. Because obviously the second group is one which told the truth. Now, let's read, although we're going to read the Mishnah, the Gemara immediately after the Mishnah really should be up here. Okay, so I'll read the Mishnah anyway, so I don't have to go back, but let's bear that in mind. Rabbi Yisrael says you never kill a murderer or any other criminal until the 2 witnesses were the ones who gave him Hasra. Shenamar, it says, Al Pi Shnai Maidim, on the verbal statement of the 2 witnesses, not just the verbal statement in court, but the verbal statement of warning to the criminal. Davrach, another interpretation of Al Pi Shnai Maidim, which is actually would not require us to have the 2 Eidim give the warning, and that in fact is what we pass, but the warning does not have to come from the 2 Eidim, come from anybody. The Davrach be as long as the 2 witnesses hear the warning given to the criminal. Apishnai Eidim means Shalote Sanhedrin Shamas B'Piyat Turgaman. On the basis of the say-so, 2 witnesses means the Sanhedrin should not hear from an interpreter, meaning there has to be at least some members of the Sanhedrin understand the language in which the testimony is given. Not all the members of the Sanhedrin have to know, but some of the members of the Sanhedrin must know the language in which the testimony is given.
Didn't you have to know 70 languages?
It seems they didn't all. First of all, that was l'chatchila. But if they didn't all know, they didn't know, then but the evidence would suffice if some of them knew. Probably not everybody in Sanhedrin knew Swahili. Probably was never the case that everybody, all members in Sanhedrin knew Swahili. So therefore, they had to. But the evidence worked out. Tani Rabbi Yesha. We learn Rabbi Yesha said, "Apostle said, Amar b'shnei kitei edim." This pasuk is talking about when there are 2 sets of witnesses, one from one window and the other from the other window. Remember, I told you this goes back in the previous issue. And what is okay and what is not. Okay? Kiyakum eid chomas b'ish. When there's an eid chomas b'ish, eid zomem, when there's an eid chomas, meaning a witness which is literally it's thieving witness, but it means here an improper group of witnesses, right? Whenever it says 8 in the Torah, it doesn't just mean 1 witness, it means 2 witnesses. So an improper group of witnesses, bish, 8 zoimim, shu'one be'ish, it's the 8 zomim who respond against the individual, meaning they pertain to this individual, la nos bo, v'lo beiduso. If they go against him, However, they don't impinge upon the other testimony, meaning that if you have two separate groups, one of which was found to be Eidim Zomim, it doesn't impinge on the testimony of the other group. The testimony of the other group is legitimate. Those people in window number 1 are not impinged by the alleged witnesses of window number 2 who turn out to be Eidim Zomim. So that's why in this case we can kill both the murderer and the Eidim Zomim. Okay?
It's not like they both came in two groups together.
Right, they didn't go, well, no, but the mice, when they were in front of Basin, they were at the same time simultaneously in front of the court.
Don't they get Prisha and Chakira separately anyway?
Yes, that's true. No, agreed. We're saying they would have been in the court at the same, even the court at the same time, they're still considered to be, separate. Okay, maybe, but again, it's not such a big Kiddush, obviously, but the more felt,
This isn't about Lane Sanhedrin.
no, it's not, this is not about it. This statement is not about it.
Okay, I recall this case.
The case is the Mishnah. Obviously, the Mishnah is in common between the Bavli and the Yerushalmi, but this specific drush is not in the Bavli. Okay, Eidim Zoim Maush Shiur Tzur Mekabel Aschoya. The Eidim Zoim have to be forewarned before they're put to death, now, which is would be a neat trick because really, at what point in the testimony you're going to warn them, but. Rabbi Lozer said, to best of my knowledge, we pass in this way. But, I'm not sure 100%. You don't have to be warned. Every other criminal activity in the Torah, if we're going to punish you, we have to warn you. We have to give you asra in order to give you whether Malchus or Misa or whatever punishment we intend to inflict upon you. By Eidim Zomim, that's not the case. By Eidim Zomim, we do not have to warn them ahead of time, which makes sense if you think about it. I never really thought it through so I prepared this yesterday, but it makes sense because by any other Avei in the Torah, there's no indication of premeditation unless there's Asra, because there's no other Avei of this Torah in the Torah, I think, which is really entails a plot to lie, and Eidim plotted to lie. But by definition, they knew what they were doing is wrong. They plotted to go and lie. So therefore, in this case, you can't say it was done on the spur of the moment, because they coordinate their testimony, everything they did, they plotted ahead of time. So therefore, it's known to have been a premeditated crime, regardless of whether warning took place or not. Okay, so that's why it would seem to not require Asra.
Person knows not to kill or not to
No. Person might do it on the spur of the moment. Those could be crimes of passion.
Right.
Eidim Zomim is not a crime of passion. Chilul Shabbos could be a crime of passion, right? And most Averos in the Torah can be, which have to do with acts, can be crimes of passion. Eidim Zomim is one of the unique Averos in the Torah which has to do with speech. Now, even other Averos have to do with speech. But the Zara, person can commit it as a crime of passion. It's also a crime of passion, right? Cursing your parents.
Yeah, right.
Cursing a Kodesh Baruch Hu is also kind of passion. But Eidim Zomim is the unique of the Torah which require, I think, okay, you can keep. No, but there's still two witnesses have to coordinate the story, because it's two people. They had to plot together. So that's why Eidim Zomim makes sense to be the only Avei Torah which doesn't require Torah. Not a spontaneous one. Okay, makes sense. Okay, I really never thought it through, but it does make sense. Ravo said, Lo chashinan lahom. The way the Kshar Teresol means, we don't suspect that they're going to do it on the spur of the moment and not have known that it's prohibited, because obviously it requires plotting and premeditation. Rabbi Yaakov Bardasi, whatever the name is, V'is nevoilin are their low lives. A novel is a low life. Sagin, who are greater, should be min elaine than these people. These are the worst scum of the earth, right? These Eidim Zomim, right? Which may be the reason he's not requiring Hasra. Either it's an agadic statement, or he's explaining why they don't require Hasra, because they're the greatest scum in the world. They see that their friend is going to go out to be killed because of their testimony, right? They framed him. Velo are included. They don't say anything to prevent it. They're the lowest scum in the earth. Okay? Interesting statement.
Well, what that would show is the purpose of
Yeah.
So he's trying to say that
They're scum.
They're amazing.
Yeah, they're amazing, right. That's, it probably is made in that context. That's what it made. Excuse me?
No, please refuse the thing.
Okay, so it says no further. This is a case which is in the Bavli as well. You have to, I think, you wrote all your property to two individuals simultaneously. And you signed witnesses on the documents, which were kosher from one of the individuals to whom you made this kinyan, and also to the other one. In other words, they're related to one of the people to whom you've written your property. Rabbi Yehuda says, we certainly had this before in the Yerushalmi, I should say. Rabbi Yehuda says, Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Shimon Lakish had a machlokas about this case. Chadam once said, "Me'akoshem psulim zeh psulim zeh." Say you should batla mitzasa batla kulas. It's no good for part of the document. They're no good for the other part of the document. The Chorana Madiyah said, "Kshem zeh kshem psulim zeh." They're kosher for one, apostle for the other. There's a whole Reb Chaim on this machlokas, if I recall correctly. Reb Chaim speaks about the concept of edim hachasum lashtar nasik mishenech kroedusim evestin. Does it mean that it's as if the entire document is one piece of testimony, and therefore which would mean that they're possible for the entire document, right? The whole testimony is canceled. Or when we say that it's as if this document has been accepted as testimony, it basically means each part of the testimony independently. It's not the document qua as a document, right? But it's the testimony of the document independently, and therefore we could say that the parts for which they're good, and the parts for which they're bad are bad. I think it's a very long shtickle in Reb Chaim, but I believe that that's basically the gist of it. I didn't look at it tonight. Raimona lo mefaresh. Raimona didn't say who said what in this machlokas Rabbi Yochanan Reish Lakish. Rabbi, turning the page, Rabbi Avu mefaresh. Rabbi Avu said who said what. Rabbi Yochanan said me'achar sheim psul zeh psul mezeh. Since they're possible for one part, they're possible for the other part. But they're kosher for one and possible the other. Rabbi Elazar, in other words, you can divide the document in half. Rabbi Elazar masnisa Messiah Rabbi Yochanan. There I have the following brisa, which is proof for Rabbi Yochanan. A mashnaim, actually it's in the Mishnah. I know it's Pagir and Nemanos. They don't have credibility vis-a-vis the other person. Pagir and Nemanos is where we give you credibility. Maybe it is Pagir and Nemanos. But Pagir and Nemanos usually has to do with when you actually verbally state something. I don't know Pagir and Nemanos.
Sure.
Yeah, I think there's more a question of how we define Nasuk Mishnah Choredus of a basin. But you might be right. Maybe there's an issue of Pagir and Nemanos. If we had time to look into it, we might come up with something like that. Next time around, right? Not when we're 37 letters. Okay. Rabbi Yochanan says, since they're possible one, they're possible the other. Shimon Lakish Amar, Kshemin was absolute. Rabbi Elazar said, right, I went back a few lines. Masnisa, the following Mishnah beside Rabbi Yochanan is proof for Rabbi Yochanan that they're possible altogether. Apostle, just like if you have two people and one of them is a Korov, as a relative or apostle or not valid witness, he doesn't tell the Edus is null and void. So the three Nimtzacham and Korov apostle, one is found to be a Korov apostle, he doesn't tell the testimony is not null and void. Not if you're a man, we know it's true even if there are 100 witnesses, they all become voided if they're all part of the same group. Tam Lomer Edim, because the apostle says Edim plural, Edim means they all become apostle. Rabbi Yaakov Maris Balgan, Rabbi Yochanan said this, Malchulish, Rabbi Chanina, Chavin, the Rabban, Rabbi Chanina, the friend of the rabbis, Rabbanan, and the rabbis. Chayim once said, Yosef, Rabbi Lezer. Rabbi Lezer said, good, meaning that this is a good parallel to Eidush Batla Miktasa Batla Kula, to the concept of where you have a group of witnesses, one is possible, they all become possible. The Chanan said, Lo Rabbi Lezer. One said, no, it's not comparable. Madam Yosef Rabbi Lezer said it's comparable. Nasa Ke'edus Achas Vasrei Achas. See, this is why I think it's really a concept of what nechra bevis basically what the concept of witnesses signing on the documents if they cross-examine the court, what that means. Because the way he puts it here, he says, Manda Marhiu says Yosef, Rabbi said good. Nasakedus Akos Basarechas means anytime you have a document, it becomes like one testimony with one warning, meaning that it's as if it's all said under the same gun, meaning it's all one long testimony, and therefore, just like if you have witnesses, as we said last night, if you have witnesses who said a statement in court and part of the statement is no good, the entire statement is considered to be no good. Comparison was not good, is on a document, each part of testimony stands by itself because it wasn't linked. When you testify verbally, the parts of your statement which are made together are linked together. But here, Basin culls the testimony out of the document. So therefore they cull it, so to speak, in swats as they take it out of the document. And therefore there's no inherent linkage between the one which you're posing for and the one which you're kosher for. That's how I think Reb Chaim learns the sugya, okay, from memory. Okay? It becomes like two separate sets of witnesses. Where they're kosher for one and possible for the other. Okay, halacha ches. Misha nikmar dino, somebody whose case was determined. He was sentenced. Uvorach, and he fled. Right now, also basically comes back from the same court. Ain't sosim as dino. They don't cancel his sentence. They meet it out. The fact he ran away doesn't merit him a retrial. Not only that, any place where two people stand up, two witnesses, and they say, we testify about this individual, I'm sorry, he was sentenced in so-and-so's court, and they remember, this I guess is crucial, that Reuven and Shimon were the witnesses in that court case. I guess that's to verify that the court case is legitimate. This individual is killed because that way we know the sentence actually took place. Okay? So even if they testify it was sentenced somewhere else, that's enough. Sanhedrin and the halachas Sanhedrin apply both in Eretz and Chutzlaretz. Sanhedrin Orega's famous Mishnah. Sanhedrin Orega's Echel B'Shavua. Sanhedrin kills once every 7 years. Nikra Chablonis is called a bloodthirsty, a damaging Sanhedrin, literally. If they killed it once every 70 years, that would be a blood-thirsty basin. They never met Texas. Rabbi Akiva says to say, where we in the Sanhedrin, lo narag ba'adam me'olam, person never killed, and the Bavli, of course, goes through a discussion of how they would have made all the Adam stumble on the cross-examination. Okay? Says, if you don't ever kill anybody, then we don't have the deterrent effect, and there are going to be more murderers in Klal Yisrael. Okay? From the Attila the Hun School of Jurisprudence. Okay. Sanhedrin noheges ba'aretz u'chutz la'aretz. Sanhedrin applies over there. You elu lachem l'chukas mishpat. These for you should be for the law of justice. L'doros lachem, for your generations. B'chomosh v'seichem, in all your settlements. Whenever it says b'chomosh v'seichem in Torah, it refers to both Eretz and Chutz La'aretz. Alright, so what do we do with that? Which it says, put judges and police in all of your gates. Sounds like, does not sound like Borei Eretz Yisrael. Doesn't sound like it means it actually goes on, based on the rest of the pasuk, says, Bar to Shem Lokechem Dosein L'cha. I forget the exact language of the rest of the pasuk. Does he bring it down here? No, he doesn't bring it down here. But that's the rest of Shotim V'Shotim. T'iten L'cha B'chol Artzecha, Asher Shem Lokecha, Dosein L'cha Nachal Ol Rishtav V'Shoftu Asam Mishpat Tzedek. Trust me, that's the rest of the pasuk. Don't trust me, but it is the rest of the pasuk. Anyway, so it sounds like Dafkan Eretz Yisrael. Ela Sheba'ala Yisrael, but in Eretz Yisrael, so there's the difference. In Eretz Yisrael, Moshin Dayanim Chol Ir V'Ir. There has to be judges in each and every city. With Chutz La'aretz, Moshin V'Som Plachim, in the Chutz La'aretz to do it district by district. And that's the distinction. Eretz Yisrael, B'chol Sharecha, every city. Chutz La'aretz, only district by district.
And that's assuming that the
Government
will
will let you do that. Right. Okay?
Is this only the districts adjacent to Eretz Yisrael?
No, it's in America too. Okay? Tari, wherever you get permission. Tari Rabbi Yistoy, Rabbi Ani Omer, mitzvah kol shevet she'yadara shiftos. A mitzvah, every shevet to have its own shevet basin. L'chsiv shotim v'shotim diten l'cho b'chol sharecha asher Hashem lokecha nosein l'cho lishvotecha. Oh, it doesn't say Baratzucha? Oh, so it's a good thing you didn't trust me when I said that. I'm pretty sure though it says Baratzucha on that pasuk. No, I just need a sitter. Can I have that sitter over there on the table? No, it's Dvorim.
Dvarim?
Shoftim is in Dvorim.
Oh, it is Dvarim. But it's the beginning of the Pasha, so it'll be in the first.
I have it. No, I made up the pasuk. Never trust me. Shoftim v'shoftim diten l'cho b'chol sharecha asher Hashem lokecha nosein l'cho lishvotecha v'shoftu es am mishpat tzedek. It don't say nothing about in the land. I guess it's just from the language of B'chol Sharecha means, sounds like in Eretz Yisrael. Okay, I apologize. I made up a pasuk before. Okay. So in any event, but in any the Yerushalmi does hold that this thing of B'chol Sharecha is Dafka in Eretz Yisrael, and I assume Shvatecha also is Dafka in Eretz Yisrael in the lands where they each shevet is settled. Tana Rishim Gamliel teaches us Mechuyavim Misa Shebaruch Min Arts L'Chutz La'aretz, a very famous halacha also in the Bavli. People who are sentenced to death who fled from Eretz Yisrael to Chutz La'aretz, Memisim Osah Miyad. We kill them wherever we find them, meaning in Chutz La'aretz, whatever court there is, kills them there. Baruch Chutz La'aretz, they fled from Chutz La'aretz Eretz Yisrael. Ein Memisim Osah Miyad. We don't kill them on the basis of whatever judgment was rendered against them. We give them a retrial. So coming to Eretz Yisrael, actually, because of the schus of Eretz Yisrael, we give them a retrial when they find themselves before the court in Israel. Okay, next parak. These are the people who go into exile. Now you must know that in order to traverse this parak successfully, you can only go into exile if you're a true shogeg, if you truly killed unintentionally. If you were, however, karov lemezid, close to intentional, but you're criminally negligent, you don't go into exile. And you're perennially, potentially subject to the goyal hadam killing you. Right? It means your entire life you are living in fear.
What if you were careless? So you're negligent, but you didn't really intend. You're just careless.
Well, that could be. It depends. So that's what we're going to discuss. What falls? Obviously, there are three categories. So the question is what the parameters of the categories are. Then on the other end, the other category is shogeg karav laonis, where you were close to being, an act of God. In that case, you don't come to ghost, but the goyal adam cannot kill you. It could be. It's also in Makkos. Okay, these are the people who go into ghosts. Somebody who kills unintentionally. If a person was rolling with a rolling pin on his roof. Okay, it's not really a rolling pin. It's a straight, it's a smooth a trowel of some sort. And it fell on somebody and killed him. Okay, he was raising a bucket or a jug, and it fell on the guy and killed him. You were going down a ladder. The nafal go and you fell upon him and killed him. I raised the girl to go to Golus. Okay, that's all derech yurida on the way down. Avol, however, in other words, he was pulling it up towards him. It wasn't going a downstroke, but an upstroke. The nafal fell on the guy and killed him. He was. Oh no, Moshe. 1 second. Yeah, Moshe is on the upswing. Or Hayadola b'chavis, he was I made a mistake for him. Mishal chavis is when he was lowering the bucket. Now he's raising the bucket. There's v'niv sarechab nafal over okto, and the rope snapped and fell upon him and killed him. Hayel b'sum is going up a ladder, v'nafal love, and he fell upon him, Varagon and killed him. Hareza enogo, it doesn't go golus because this is considered to be karav leonis. On the way down is a true shogeg. On the way up is considered to be similar to an act of God. Anytime he's on his way down, he goes, and it's learned from the pasuk because it says v'yipol lov, it's going to fall upon him. So he's on his way up, so it's to the karav leonis. The ain't goal that he doesn't go into goals. Okay? Rabbi Potar Chiapis Kol Chevel. Rabbi exempts you until you let the entire rope slip out of your hands. Meaning if the rope snaps, it's also an oris. It's only if as you're lowering it, you lose your grip and the rope slips out of your hand, that's a shogeg. And then you go into goals. Okay? Rabbi Shimon Potar Chiata Kol Machlatzon. If you're using this a tool, an instrument on your roof, you have to let go of the instrument. Only then you're liable. But if it snaps in your hand, so then you're not both chayav and goes again because it's karav l'ones. It's more similar to an act of God. It should say here, my demar, changing like the korban edo. My demar Rabbi Huda b'psikas achevel. My demar Rabbi Shimon b'shmitas machlotzon. That which Rabbi Yehuda said. There are other interpretations, but I'm going to korban edo because it's the most partial. That which Rabbi Yehuda said by psikas achevel is the same that Rabbi Yehuda said by the rope snap. Is the same thing Rabbi Shimon said by the tool breaking, meaning that both of them are saying the same thing. That if the thing slips out of your hands, that's a shogeg. But if it snaps or breaks in your hands, that's karav l'onis, and you wouldn't go into golus in that situation. Just one used the example of the rope snapping, and the other used the example of the tool snapping, but they're both saying the same thing. Rabbi Yirmiyah boikun Rabbi Avo. Rabbi Yirmiyah asked in front of Rabbi Avo. He was using one of these implements, b'derech halichosa. Now nobody's 100% clear what this means, but I think the pshat is like this. Derech halichosa means he's not going down or up, but directly sideways. Okay? Derech halichosa votzia los rosho. And he goes off the edge of the roof at somebody's head, at the exact time that somebody's head pops up over the side of the roof. Votilos Rosho, the other guy pops up his head, Vitichlo, and you bang into his head. Now, according to the Shaita, so this for initial question is talking about where you damaged him, not killed him. But the Pachas in the Gemara say you killed him. Are you chayav golus? So because it wasn't aliyah or yerida, it was direct sideways. It was horizontal motion, not up and not down. What's the story in this case? So it says the Gemara, Amalei said he aliyah, he yerida. In this case, the same thing. It doesn't make a difference whether it's up or down, since it is sideways. But he does go into goals no matter what. Whereas there is a difference up and down, but not when he goes sideways. Now that's how I learn Pshat Gemara. It's not all clear that I'm right about that. Because the response, he aliyah, he yerida, is very cryptic, what exactly that means. But that's how I learned it, that sideways there's no aliyah and yerida, of course, and therefore you're liable to goals no matter what. Okay? So whether it's when you go up and down is relevant. Now yeah?
I was just trying to think in physics, you have an arrow going up, arrow going down. So the sideways is the
right.
combination of the up and down.
Right. Now, of course, I don't know if there's also an element here that the head was not there when you were, that's what made it a shogeg, right? The head was not there when you did what you did. Otherwise, it'd be karav l'mezid, right? But on the other hand, maybe it should have been chayshish that the head was coming up. That's why it's an issue. All these, again, this is my way of learning the case, but it's not clear that this is correct, and there are many other ways of learning. But now, what also throws everybody off is the next case Rabbi Yirmiyah asked. Rabbi Yirmiyah asked for it seems to be the same case. He's going side, according to my version, he's going sideways. Voshirat Tinokis Yoda Verotata, and a kid stuck out his hand and he chopped off the kid's hand. Now this is clearly not miso, right? It's not right, but the question must therefore be whether he's chayav nezek in this case. So in this case it says, you're causing me difficulty again? I already answered you before, right? Hi aliyah, hi yerida. It's the same thing going up, same thing going down. So if this sounds, perhaps there's Yisrael, the Rabbi Yirmiyah is asking the same question again. And that would mean that the first question is also about nezek. But then again, perhaps what he meant to be meant when he said, why are you bothering me again, is that I taught you the principle already. And the principle is that it's not an onus, right? So in other words, if a kid, but on the other hand, what makes it still difficult is that we know Adam Mu'ad. So what is even the Shaila, right? You have to always be careful when it comes to nezek you're always liable. Money to pay, you're always liable to pay. No matter what, there don't have to be any, doesn't have to be any intentionality, right? If a person falls asleep and he rolls over something, he's liable. But perhaps Rabbi Yirmiyah thought that this case is mamish a case of onus. And this is an ultimate onus, right? The analogous case of Baba Kama would be where you were sleeping somewhere and somebody else came and lied down next to you, and then you damaged them, in which case you are potter, because you have no way of knowing. So this is saying to him, no, it's not mamish onus, right? Even though the hand was not there when you started making your motion, but since the hand could have come up, therefore you're liable to pay, it makes no difference. Okay? So again, the way I would like to learn is that we're talking about sideways motion. The first case was an issue vis-a-vis goals, and the answer was yes, there is goals. The second case, the case vis-a-vis damages, and we're saying yes, there is payment made in this case. Okay. Halacha base. Nishmara ba'azo mikito v'horag. Let's say you're chopping with an axe, and this is actually the case in the Chumash itself. This is really a case of the issue is one of exegesis here. Whereas my friend used to call it exeyoshka. How do you read the psukim in the Torah? Nishmata ba'azo mikito. While you're chopping with an axe, the blade flew off the handle. V'horag and killed. Rabbi Omer, ain't a goal. Rabbi says you don't go to the goals. You're korban amazing. That's not korban onus, right? Because that's not shogeg. Chachamim say do go to goals for that. If a sliver of wood shoots out of the tree while you're chopping, Rabbi says that's the case of goals, okay? Because that's true shogeg, right? Where while you're chopping, a piece of wood flies out of the tree and hits him, that's goals. Chachamim say not go under that circumstance, that's korav le'onus. Okay? So the question is what we do with the pasuk. My time at the Rebbe, what's the logic of Rebbe? Nema kan shila. It says in the case of a Horeb Shori, it says v'noshal habarzel min ha'etz. That's the language of the pasuk. Okay? The noshal barzel min ha'etz. The question is what does it mean noshal barzel min ha'etz? Does it mean that the metal flew off the hand, the wooden handle, or does it mean the metal gouged a piece out of the tree, which then flew and hit the guy? Okay, so and the Bavli basically has the same machlokas and drashas, so those are not quite the same, and it's not interesting enough to go into the nuances of difference, but they are similar. Okay, so Navin says more my time. Remi Nemakav in Nishila, it says here in Nishila. Nemalon says later on, Kishal Zisecha, when your olive trees, the olives start falling off. Man Nishila Shnemalon, there would start falling out of the tree. The olives fall out of the tree. I've got Nishila, so to here, it's stuff falling out of the tree. Meaning you hit the tree and the tree gouges a piece, and the piece of the tree gets gouged out, and it shoots at the guy and kills him. Okay? My time with the Rabban, what's the Rabban? Nemar Kam Neshila, it says no Shila. V'nemar Lahalon, it says later on, V'noshala Hashem Elokechos HaGoyim El Milponecha. Hashem will smite out the Goyim who are in front of you from before you when you conquer Israel. Ma Neshila Shnemar Lahalon Makkos, is just like Neshila, and this is not in the Bavli really, just like Neshila over there is a smiting. Afghan Makkos, so to here, it's the smiting. So what's the thing which is smiting? In other words, the axe blade handle is doing the axe blade. So in the smiting, so that must be the thing which falls off and hits the guy. Okay? Again, it's not exactly the same Russian property, but not for our purposes right now.
Does the also distinguish whether the axe head falls off on the downward stroke or...
Yeah, well, that's coming up. But Yerushalmi probably holds of that as well, but it's not brought down here. I don't remember if the Bavli actually goes in that detail in this case. You remember that it does?
I don't know if that... I know it's mentioned.
But it is coming up. That is coming up in the bottom of Daf Hamer base. If you just toss a stone blithely into the Rishus Harabim, into the public domain, for Harag going to kill somebody, I raise a golet, then you're going to go. If once you toss the stone, the guy presented his head. The Kibla, he thought he was playing soccer with the stone, right? He took the stone on his head. I raise it plus your example because you're korov le'ones, right? So it says matzah. The way he dashes is from the pasuk of matzah. It says the stone finds the fellow. In other words, the fellow is there and the stone finds him, right? As opposed to the stone coming and the fellow finding the stone. Anyway, but the one asks, I understand the whole mission, isn't this korv l'mezid? Who has permission to throw stones into the Rishus Harabim, right? This is blatantly korv l'mezid. Rabbi Yosef Rabbi said, Rabbi Boone said rather, Tipata, you can explain, Shakoslo Gohe, where you had a wall which was about to fall down. And halachos, of course, you're allowed to break down the wall in order to rebuild it properly. So as he's breaking down the wall, somebody passed by and it killed the person who was passing by. Okay? Which I think is similar to what the Bibli says. If somebody tossed a stone into his own yard, for Horag, and that killed. If the person who was damaged, the victim, was allowed to be there at that time, Gola, then the mazik goes in the goals. The Avi had no right to be there. Ain't go, then the owner of the courtyard does not go into goals, because it wasn't his problem that this guy was there. Shemar says, somebody who comes upon his friend in the forest, and he kills him there inadvertently. Just like before, both the mazik and the nizik have the right to go there, so too in all situations. Yotza chotzer as opposed to a chotzer owned by a Baal Bais, Shemishus nizik, it says here lamazik, but Marshal takes out the word lamazik. Shemishus lanizak likones l'sham, where the don't have permission, where the person who was damaged was not supposed to have been there. Abba Sholomer, he says different. Just like chopping down trees is an optional activity, so too if you kill inadvertently, of course, of any optional activity, or you go to goals. Yota was the post case of Hamakis Beno, if a father hits a son, which is a mandatory mitzvah activity. A student and a teacher hits a student, which is of course mandatory. Ushliach basin and the agent of basin who hits on half a basin. All these are mandatory activities, and therefore the person who does it is not going to goes. Rabbi Yana said, Tabach shu mikatsev, a butcher who's cleaving, chopping, meat or bones, and he kills somebody, whether he's on the swing in front, which is really lamata, or the swing in back, he goes into goes. Now what happens derech aliyah and derech yirida? So the Yerushalmi explains. The asya, this is going like kaidemar Rav Huna, like Rav Huna said. Tabach shumikat save, a butcher who's butchering. V'kol fanav, and he hits in front of him. Lamata, now, there's four motions actually in a swing, right? There's down in front, up in front, down and back, up and back, right? And you can keep on dissecting the motions into those four sections, right? So we need derech yirida, not derech aliyah, right? So he dissects the motions, right? He says, Tabakshu mekatzevi kolafanav lematon on the way down, that's derech yirida goyla. Lemalon on the way up, ain't a goyla. Leachrav, if he's going backwards, lemalon meaning further back. Lemalon here means further back. goyla, because that's their chirida. Lamaton meaning going back up, which is lamata because it's part of the general downswing. Ain't a goyla, doesn't go to goes. Now that's just one way of interpreting what lamala and lamaton mean here. You can interpret, there's many different ways of trying to interpret what lamala and lamaton means. But the bottom line is we dissect the move into 4 sections, and depending how we define each of the 4 sections is how whether it goes and goes or not. Rabbi Yitzchak said, very logical statement, and this I don't remember this in the Bible. Kol milo l'daite. Each and every situation follows its own logic. Yoshua agabe mita b'yoyim. If you sat on a mita during the day, and it seems like this is a couch, not necessarily a real bed. And it's not normal for the kid to be on the baby on the bed during the day. Goyla, you're going to go. Why? Because that's shogeg. You could have checked, but you're not that responsible, right? It's not korban l'mesid. However, balayla, if you sat on this couch at night and they put the kid to bed on the couch at night, then ain't no goyla because of what? You're korov l'mesid, right? Obviously, you should have looked before you sat down.
The person that has rishus to be in your rishus yochid.
He had rishus to be there. Very good, very good. And agabi arisa. Arisa is a crib of some sort. Yosha agabi arisa b'yoyim. B'derech hatinok dinos agabi arisa b'yoyim. And the child is normally in that crib during the day, or a playpen or something. Ain't no good, don't go to ghost because that's pshia. But Laila, ain't derech tinok nitei and arisa b'layla is not usually there at night. Girl, then you go to ghost because that is legitimate children. Now, this is the case we had above a comma already. Or said, or if he's chopping wood in his yard, and the employee comes to get paid. Not a bakas olav, if a piece of wood, a splinter, flies on him and damages him, chayiv, you have to pay. If he makes, if he dies, ain't no goyla, you don't go to golos. Why is that? Because damages are the more the yolam, right? Misa, no, to go into golos, no, it's korov lones, and you don't have to pay. Okay?
But did he know that the worker was coming?
We're coming on to that. Why is that? So it says, she'eno biyar, but truly be kiyar. It's not like a forest, meaning that the worker shouldn't have been there. Right? Nevertheless, you're chayiv on nezeh. It's like the famous case of the burglar who burgled a house and he fell off the roof, he hurt himself on the roof of the guy's house. What? And the owner pays, right? Because that's the fact that he was burgling your house doesn't doesn't mean you can provide with unsafe work conditions, right? So the same thing here, the fact that he was coming without permission, but still you have to be careful, right? If a person can come in. Now that's what it seems to say. Tayrachinil says palter. No, you're palter. You don't have to pay him even for damages. And it says more of a low plikin. It's not a machlokas. Ma'adamara v'yitzchinina. That which Rabbi Yitzchak said, you are liable to pay him damages. B'shalo ro'oso. It's where you didn't see him. Im b'shalo ro'oso. If you didn't see him, came and kones. Once you said, come in. Right, so you said, come in. And you didn't see him. Chayiv should be liable for golos. Because you're not karav loines anymore, right? You told the guy to come in, you don't see him. How do you go about continuing to chop wood under that circumstance? You're definitely going to golos. Why are you putting from golos, right? So, oh no, that's not the question. So sorry, that's not the question. Not the question of goals. The question on Rabbi Chia. Rabbi Chia says you part it from damages. Im b'shalo so came and Shamalo Yikones Chayov.
if he rolled also.
What?
Because that case is if he rolled also.
Yeah, but so we just said, yeah.
Talking about Nezek, or you talking about Gols?
Nezek. No, we just said Maratayim Rebbe Chia, they... Wait a second. There is no Rebbe Chia here. It said before Maratayim Rebbe Chia. There's no Rebbe Chia, is there? There's no Rebbe Chia here. What is there Rebbe Chia?
That's Rebbe Chanina.
Let me just check Baba Kama again. It should be Rabbi Chia. Rabbi Chanina is Rabbi Chia. The same thing. So 1 second. Okay, I messed up. I forgot to change the gears of like to change the Baba Kama. It should be below Pligin. Going back to the first white line, below Pligin. Matamara b'Yisrael Chanina b'Shero. That's what it says in Baba Kama. B'Shero. B'Shero also. Madatani Rabbi Chia is b'Sheloro. Okay, that which Rabbi Yosef says he's liable for the damages is when he saw him. That which Rabbi Chia says he's not, or Rabbi Chanina says he's not liable for damages where he didn't see him. I partially didn't realize you have to change the gears like you did over Baba Kama there. Okay? In B'Shaloro, so then that's a natural question. In B'Shaloro, so if Rabbi Chanina or Rabbi Chia's case, a case where he didn't see him, came and Shemalo Kones, once he told him come in, Chayav, he should be liable. But Tanya Rabbi Chia Potter, so how can Rabbi Chia say he's Potter? Right? How can Rabbi Chia say he's Potter? If you didn't see him, yet you told him come in, so then you're negligent. You should not be Potter. Came to Tzarich, the notes, it says in a fascinating thing. Came to Omar Loli Kones. When I tell a guy come into my yard, so tzarich lishmor es atzmo. He's got to watch himself. But yeah, I just gave you permission to come into my yard. I said you can come in, but you have to watch yourself when you come in. I assume you heard him chopping wood. Yeah.
You have to warn him. He's stay out of the way.
But what? I don't remember what the Bible said. I don't know what the Bible says differently. I don't remember. Do you remember the Bible says different?
Yeah, we just covered it. I'm reading Baba Kama and Shabbos.
Yeah. And it says he doesn't have to watch himself?
Well, no.
Maybe that's like Rabbi Yosef Bar Chanina.
Now it becomes horrible music.
No, you see, that's Rabbi Yosef Bar Chanina.
Oh.
He's the boy Meimar. So those who want to say, meaning Rabbi Yosef Bar Chanina says, once you told him to come in, it's like becomes like he's a partner in the field, partner in the yard, and that's why you're liable for him. And now the reason why I don't go to goes is taka because you are karav lamezid. In other words, once again, so it's a different perspective. According to Rabbi Yechia, when you tell him to come in, he's got to watch himself. For Rabbi Yechia, when you tell him to come in, then you have to watch him. Okay, so it's a machlokas who's got to watch whom. When you give him permission to come in. That's the machlokas. Okay? Rabbi Yochanan said, Shutfim konim zem is the ones on top of your shutfim. So Shutfim konim zem is a b'chotzer. Shutfim acquire from each other in a courtyard, meaning they can use the courtyard to make acquisitions from each other. Memachin zayde ze b'chotzer. They prevent each other's usage in the chotzer. The chayovin zeh v'niz kezeh. And each one is liable for the damages of the other. Which is Rabbi Yosef Bar Chanina's perspective, right? That you have to watch for your friend in the courtyard. Says more very interesting Zustand. This is why it's brought on Baba Kama. Wait a minute. If Lochen Amar Rabbim and Male is called Shusa Rabbim, then Rab say the only time you're liable for having caused somebody damage by putting your drug in Rishusa Rabbim and he having tripped over it, is if you filled all of Rosh Hashanah jugs. But if you didn't fill the whole Rosh Hashanah with jugs, and he can walk around, so just because he was an idiot and tried to walk over your jug, doesn't make you chayiv. It's only if you prevented any access throughout Rosh Hashanah. So here, why are you chayiv for your shutav? The zuenim amalas go Rosh Hashanah. You're not filling the entire Rosh Hashanah. You weren't chopping wood in your entire yard. Why are you liable for him getting damaged? He should have walked around, right? It's true you gave him permission to come in, but it's no different than if somebody's going to Rosh Hashanah. Let him walk around. Since the normal derech is to walk throughout a yard, right? People don't realize they should avert certain parts of the yard. So therefore, if he's filling the entire yard, and therefore you're liable wherever he goes. Okay? A father goes into son goes into Golus by killing his son. When he does not teach, when he's not hitting him in the course of teaching him. And if the son be his father. Everybody's in Golus when by fellow Jews. And other Jews go to Golus via them. But that's not true. If the person you hit was a ger toshav, then you don't go to Golus. The ger toshav is a goy who accepts upon himself the 7 commandments, not a complete convert. For ger toshav, they ger toshav, but a ger toshav does go into Golus if he killed another ger toshav. Hasum a blind person doesn't go into Golus if he killed the Rabbi Yehuda. Meir says doesn't go into Golus. Hasum ain't a Golus. Somebody who hates somebody else not going to Golus because we say he probably didn't amaze it. Right? Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Hasone Nerak. If a person who hates another person kills that other individual, even unintentionally, you kill him. Neshu Kamur, we assume he did it intentionally. There's an amazing Gemara, but the Yerushalmi just ignores it. Rabbi Shimon, Yesh Son Egal, Yesh Son Sheinago, it depends. Some do and some don't. Koshi Yochom Adas anytime we can assume was intentional. Einago doesn't go to Golus. Das, if we assume it's truly unintentional, then harag harez it does go into those. Amrai b'zira, so even an enemy can legitimately and sincerely kill somebody inadvertently. Amrai b'zira said Tan Rabbi Shua Barbuna said, Klapeish Nemer, since it says goel adam who. Let me start saying. Now it says goel adam, but it says who. The word who is superfluous. The revenger of the blood, he shall kill the murderer. So this who is a mute, it's an exclusion. What does it exclude? If somebody smote his son, Reuven killed his son, Yaakov killed his son Reuven. Ein ben Osheni, Shimon, his other son, does not become the Goel Adam. Because you figure, the nearest relative becomes Goel Adam. So maybe the other son becomes the Goel Adam to avenge the death of his brother by killing his father. So that we don't say. The who excludes that. But a brother killed another brother, then a surviving brother, the third brother, of course, he becomes Gol Adam to kill his brother who was the murderer. Okay, who only excludes one case, we exclude the least halachically sound case, not all cases. Now, Rabbi Yaakov said, now, according to the version we have in the Gemara, the Shaitar Yisrael takes us all out. He says it makes no sense. And truth is, it does make very little sense. The Picarbonate has a really wacky way of learning it, but I shouldn't use the word wacky, I apologize. Picarbonate has a very tortured way of learning it. But it's probably better to take it out. But I'll read it for you anyway. He learns to use the mute to say the exact opposite. If somebody killed his son, then the second son does become the Goel Adam. The exact opposite of what we learned before. Karmeda couldn't stomach that, so he learns Beno Sheni here means the grandson. The grandson becomes the Goel Adam. Beno Sheni means the second generation, which is very difficult, but that's what he says. Second, the grandson can become the avenger to kill the grandfather. Not the son, the father, but a grandson can become an avenger. That's how he learns this. But it's very dochik in the language. But a brother kills another brother, a second brother does not become, does the brother is not becoming the avenger. And the Yerushalmi here brings on the kasha from one of the cases with David and Yoav or Amasa. I forget exactly who it was, but in any event, there was a case where a brother did become an avenger of his brother's daughter, Amasa, and I forget who the two of them were. One of the Yoav was the murderer. I forget who the two brothers were, Asoil and Amasa, something like that. I forget the two cases. Anyway, it's against Pasuk Mefurish the way it is over here in the Gemara. Be that as it may, says Mar Minayin Afilu Amar She'ena Yochel Lakbilo. Now the way the Sharates fixes this drasha to Yerushalmi Makkos cuts out everything in the middle, which is difficult. Everything in the middle, all the difficult matter in the middle. I don't know if he's correct or not, but it's interesting to contemplate that. Minayin Shafilu Amar She'ena Yochel Lakbilo. Several interpretations of this. Carbonate has a very difficult parish in this, but there's an interesting Pnei Moshe. The Pnei Moshe says that how do we know that if you couldn't do it immediately, that you can do it later on? The Goyal Adam constantly pursues the unintentional murder. Tamlo Repigo Bo, not just immediately, but Pigo Bo means when you meet up with immediately, but rather whenever you get a chance, even later on. The Goyal Adam is constantly looking to avenge the death of the person who was killed. Sharates is another cuter shot. I don't know if it's Amos. He says, but Pico sounds like a Goyal Adam can only kill the unintentional murder from the front, frontally. Pico means when he meets up with him. No, they hit each other. How do you know you can even stab the guy in the back? How do you know the Goyal Adam can even stab the guy in the back? It says who you misenem. Whatever way you can kill him, avenge the other guy's death, you do it. Not just by Pigo by meeting up with him, but even in some roundabout way. Okay. Says more of Asuma, a blind person. Amar Rabbi Rabba said, Mantan Asuma, who's the one who said a Suma is exempt from ghosts? Rabbi Yudah. Rabbi Yudah played Shemikol mitzvahs hamus b'Torah. Rabbi Yudah says Suma is exempt for all mitzvahs in Torah. The Tniya and Tamon, we learned over there. Rabbi Yudah Mer Koshlo Ra Moris Miyam, of anybody who never saw the lights of the day, and Lo Yifros Shema, he doesn't say you can't daven Shachris, because it says Yotor Vari Choshech, all that, he can't daven Shachris, right? For the Yom. Haim Ra Peiris. But if he did see the Moeris Miyamov, then he can reach to read that part of Shachris. Ushneim Mikra Echad Darshan. Says the Gemara, they both darshan the same pasuk, which is going to be difficult. Below Ra'os, if somebody comes to upon his friend without seeing him and kills him inadvertently, then Rameir Melu Rabo says Asuma. Rameir says include somebody who can't see, including a blind person. Rameir Pralusuma notes somebody normally sees as opposed to here he can't see, which precludes a blind person. So this is difficult because Lamaisa, it sounds like we need a special pasuk. Not that it's a p'tur of kol Torah kula, right? Because the suma's part of kol mitzvah, you don't need a special pasuk of bloros to exempt him, right? Bloros sounds like, despite the fact that he's chayv in mitzvahs, over here he's part of because of the special pasuk, right?
Assuming it's a mitzvah.
Ghost is a mitzvah.
What?
Ghost is a mitzvah.
Ghost is a mitzvah.
So it's a strange kind of mitzvah, but it's a mitzvah. Okay. So now, Lamais and B'chavashita say, the Rabbi Meir. The Gemara is kind of choppy. It doesn't really deal with this properly. That was back by Kama, but it's not substantially different over there. B'chavashita say it should be Rabbi Yehuda. The Pnei Moshe changed it. B'chavashita say Rabbi Meir. So Rabbi Meir seems contrary. The Rabbi Yehuda. Tamanu Omer, over there he says, meaning by us, he says, Potter, he's exempt from goals. It's exempt from all mitzvahs in the Torah. The Ko Omer Chayav. Over there, it sounds like he's saying Asuma is liable in all mitzvahs, right? It says that it's only an exemption because he can't see the light of the sun and the stars. But it sounds like otherwise he'd be liable. So it sounds like it's chayav. So they don't do it the below ra'os thing. We'll come back to that later on. But right now we're dealing with the contradiction. If you say Mishalora Amos Miyamad Lo Yifros Shema, sounds like he really is chayiv in Shema. It's just a technicality. He never saw light. What do you mean? He just said Suma is example for all mitzvahs in the Torah. So the Gemara says a very cute thing. We have this Baba Kama. It's actually several places in Shas, in the Yerushalmi. It says, I'm Rabbi Chanina braid. I changed the B'tari, so I changed Prat to Potter and Komer L'Chayav instead of L'Rabos, meaning that it sounds like here, in the case of Krishma, it sounds like the Summa is really Chayav mitzvahs. Rabbi Rav said, you know what? B'yoshe b'bayis ofel he must nisa. That which it says, if he never saw light his entire life, he can't lead the tzibur and Shema. That's somebody who's sighted, but he's lived in a dark house his entire life. He's never seen the light of day. Do you remember that at all? Vaguely? That's how he learned that he's never seen the light of day. He can't read Shema. So he's takachayv mitzvahs because he's sighted, but he's lived in a cave his whole life. He can't read be Motzu Shema because he's never had that hana to lead the tzibur on that praise of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, right? That's what we say. Shema. Okay, that makes sense, right? That's what we say. A person who sits in a bayis ofel shouldn't read Shema. But Echam is Suma's part from Shema for other reasons because he's blind. Now it says more below rosa rabbis is a summa. But wait a second. Below the rose, if you say summa parts we call mitzvahs, so why do we have this machloikas below rose where it includes summa, excludes summa? According to Yehuda, we shouldn't have such a thing. Below rose shouldn't be used for the purpose of summa because summa's part we call mitzvahs, right? So my Mekarabanu, what do the rabbis mean, Rabbi Yehuda? What do they do with below rose? You can't come to talk about Summa and exclude a Summa like we said before, because anyway a Summa is exempt for all mitzvahs, including goals. So below rose means lo havis law. It means if you hit somebody at night, if you smite somebody at night, so then according to Rabbi Yehuda, you might have machlokas Rabbi Rameir. Rameir says you're chayav in goals, Rabbi Yehuda says you're part in goals. I'm not sure who would hold what, but Lamaisa was going with what we said before. Before we said how Bruloros Kunrabuna is Prat Summa, that cannot be. Because Rabbi exempt Summa because of Kol Mitzvahs Amuras Patera, Summa is exempt. Rather, it has to use Bruloros with something they have to do with nighttime. Okay, we'll stop here for this evening. We could read the whole next mission, which is very long, but we'll leave it for tomorrow night.